The book of Ruth. It's on page 187 in the red Bibles in front of you. So we're going to start with just a recap. We've been going through the book of Ruth, which is a beautiful, beautiful story in the Old Testament. One of the most beautiful kind of short stories in antiquity. But Ruth opens up with this ominous line, "In the days when the judges ruled." The judges, which a key verse in that book is, in those days there was no king, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Naomi was a woman living in Bethlehem, days of insecurity, instability, and uncertainty. Her thoughts about the future were, can I raise my family here in safety? And we feel that uncertainty and instability and insecurity in our own day. As a culture, we've rejected the king, and everyone does what's right in their own eyes. Now, the king is supposed to be someone who rules with righteousness and judgment. Now, we're American, so we inherently are like, no, kings are horrible, right? Because, we're American. I mean, King George, no. But the Bible presents actually a different view of leadership than that in terms of what a king ought to be. In 2 Samuel 23, verses 3 and 4, when one rules justly over men, ruling in the fear of God, he dawns on them like a morning light, like the sun shining forth on a cloudless morning, like rain that gives grass to sprout the earth. A beautiful picture of good leadership that Israel did not have in the days of the judges. A good ruler with a good character who demonstrates love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I would want to be led by someone like that. A ruler who has God on their mind and godliness in their character, living for God's glory, not their own. I could live under a king like that. But our culture says self is king, not God. Morality is whatever you feel. With sexuality, whatever you feel. With money, whatever you can get. With power, whatever is necessary. And the poor are lesser people who deserve what they get. Now, people don't say that out loud a lot, but they live it out. And a lot of this comes from Nietzsche, not the Bible. Everyone does what's right in their own eyes. The Bible says how you treat the least of these is how you treat me. And this was Naomi's reality, right? It is hard to find rest in a world like that, in the days when the judges ruled. And then there was a famine, climate instability, right? The stability that's normal goes abnormal. And if you're like me and you had tomatoes this year, they didn't work very well, right? Naomi had no rest in Bethlehem, and so she and Elimelech left for the country of Moab to find a life there. Then her husband Elimelech dies. Naomi struggles on. Naomi finds wives for her two husbands. Then they too die. Sorry, two sons, yeah. She did not have two husbands. She was a godly woman. Naomi found no rest in Moab. Naomi, whose name means refreshment, found no refreshment. Instead grew bitter, feeling like God was against her. No husband, no sons, and her husband's line is broken. Now, in their culture is a lot different than our progressive culture. In their culture, children are a blessing, not a hindrance, not an inconvenience. And so family is something to fight for, to long for. And now she has no hope for that in Moab. So she returns to Bethlehem with Ruth, her daughter-in-law, Ruth who loves Naomi, and they're starving and hopeless. But Ruth finds favor in the eyes of Boaz, an old friend of Elimelech and a relative. They have hope because Boaz gives it to them, because God gives it to them. He notices Ruth gleaning in his field, and he pours blessing upon her in the form of work, food, and a prayer. Here's Boaz's prayer over Ruth. This is just a recap of what we've gone over. May the Lord repay you for what you have done to Naomi. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. That's the story up until chapter 3. Naomi has no family, no descendants, no hope, but she has Ruth. And she has a kinsman redeemer. One of these, Boaz, is a man of great worth, and he has given favor to Ruth. So now she has hope. So now, in the open of chapter 3, she makes a plan. Her daring plan for rest. One day, Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, should I not try to find a home for you where you will be well provided for? Is not Boaz, with whose servant girls you have been, a kinsman of ours? Tonight, he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash and perfume yourself. Put your best clothes on. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know that you are there until he is finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet. Lie down. He will tell you what to do." "I will do whatever you say," Ruth answered. Naomi has an idea. And it's a kind of a scandalous idea. But what it's coming out of, the NIV, different translations translate in different theories. And the NIV kind of hides this word. When it says, "Should I not find a home for you?" In the original language Hebrew, it says, "Shall I not find you rest?" Shall I not find you rest, which is the word Noah? It's what she had prayed for Ruth and Orpah back in chapter 1. Chapter 1, verses 8 and 9. "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to the dead and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Now, rest is this idea of a permanent home. Rest. It's marriage for this woman. Protection. Financial stability. Emotional stability. That's what marriage ought to be. The brokenness of the world makes it not so for many people. Naomi cares so much about Ruth that she wants her to find rest. So here's the plan. Tonight, Boaz will be on the threshing floor. It's kind of towards the end of the harvest, and a farmer with a lot of grain is a happy farmer. Farmer who's threshing the wheat is happy, and they kind of have a party-like atmosphere during the workday because it's abundance. So he's going to be happy. He's going to be kind of partying. He's going to eat a lot. He might drink a lot. And he's just going to be like, "Yeah, this is the good life." That's a good time to move. So put on a nice dress. Wash yourself. Put on perfume. Sneak up. And after he's laid down to rest, uncover his feet from his blanket. Then lie down and wait. And as the night gets cooler, his feet, which are exposed now, not under the blanket, will get cooler, and he'll wake up. When he wakes up, do whatever he says to do. Like, whoa. Okay, so she went down to the threshing floor, did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. And when Boaz had finished eating and drinking, he was in good spirits. And he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. You know what happens at threshing floors between men and women? We do. Well, what if she's caught? What if she's found out? This foreigner. People think all kinds of things, don't they? Now, the original readers would notice that these are a lot of the same Hebrew words that were in the story of Judah and Tamar, which is also a scandalous story about a woman trying to keep her family line alive. That's the story we enter into. It's the opposite of chapter 2. Chapter 2 was in broad daylight. Now, we're in the middle of the night. Chapter 2, totally in public when Ruth and Boaz are interacting, right? Chapter 3, nobody else sees what's going on. Chapter 2, Boaz initiated with Ruth, and now, culturally crazy, Ruth is initiating with Boaz. Chapter 2 is about food and the blessing of that. Chapter 3 is about marriage. Ruth's bold request. Verses 8 and 9. In the middle of the night, something startled the man, and he turned and discovered a woman lying at his feet. A woman! Now, a woman lying at your feet at the threshing floor is usually about one thing. He said, "Who are you?" Now, in chapter 2, he said, "Whose is this woman?" Now he says, "Who are you?" Now, what was Naomi's instructions? Do you remember? Wash up, put perfume on, do whatever he says to do. What does Ruth do? Not that, actually. Ruth says, "I am your servant Ruth." She said, "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a kinsman redeemer." Spread your cloak over me. It's an invitation. But it's an invitation that has amazing depth to it. Because the corner of a garment is this word kanaf. There's this Hebrew word kanaf, which is the edge of a thing, the corner of a thing. It could be the corner of a roof, an overhang of a roof is a kanaf. Okay? A bird's wing is a kanaf. The corner of a blanket is a kanaf. What she's saying is, you remember the blessing you prayed for me in chapter 2? The blessing that says, may you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose kanaf, wings, you have come to take refuge. Ruth is saying, let me come under your wings. And in coming under your wings, under your blanket, it will be God who is taking care of me. This is a huge risk. How will Boaz reply? He could get angry. He could get insulted. He could take advantage of her. He could totally ignore her. Is this Judah and Tamar again? No. Because Boaz is a man of noble character. Boaz makes a decision. In that moment, he says yes. But he says it in a way that's beautiful. He says, "The Lord bless you, my daughter. This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier." The kindness of coming back with Naomi and loving her and abandoning your former life, that kindness was amazing. He said of Ruth earlier, "All that you have done, how you left your father and mother in your native land and came to a people that you did not know before." That's how Abraham is described. Abraham left his father and mother, left his land, went to a new land to see what God had. Ruth, you're like that, and that was an amazing blessing. But now you have not come and run after another younger man, whether rich or poor. Now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do all that you ask. My fellow townsmen know that you are a woman of noble character. Boaz sees her. He knows her. He's seen her working the last 7 weeks in the field. He's seen her love for Naomi, that Ruth is about Naomi. Ruth loves her mother-in-law and says, "I want to serve you and give to you." And Boaz says, what you are asking right now, what Ruth is asking is not for Ruth's benefit. It is because she will find rest in the home of Boaz. But Boaz is a kinsman redeemer, which we'll talk more about next week, a relative who can redeem the whole family and the whole family line. Ruth loves Naomi, so she says, "You know what, Naomi? I will marry for your sake." If Ruth had been thinking of herself, she would have gone after a younger man. She'd gone after a young man who was rich. Instead, Ruth denied herself for the sake of Naomi. And Boaz says, "Here you are approaching me." More than that, the phrase Boaz uses, "Ruth, I see that you're a woman of noble character." What's really cool is that our English Bibles, they have a book order, right? And so the table of contents, you look at it, and it goes Joshua, then Judges, and then Ruth. The Hebrew Bible, which is what this was originally written in, that's not the order. In the Hebrew Bible, the book of Ruth comes right after the book of Proverbs. And the book of Proverbs ends in chapter 31, speaking about a woman of noble character. And then you run right into the book of Ruth. This is what this woman of noble character sounds like in chapter 31. A wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. Verses 13 to 24 in chapter 31, it's like she buys clothes, she buys a field, she's super productive in society, she cares for the poor, she cares for her own children. And verse 23, her husband is respected at the city gates because of her, where he takes his seat among the elders. Her children rise and call her blessed. Her husband also, he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her her reward she has earned, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. Boaz is saying, I see in you, Ruth, this woman of noble character. Because you're not about yourself. You're not about yourself, you're about others. In the Hebrew Bible, chapter 31 of Proverbs, you read it, and then you go right into Ruth, and you see it. You experience, wow, this is what a woman of noble character looks like, and she's a Moabite. It's shocking, actually. So Boaz is like, you said to take you in. You said to redeem your whole family. You are a kinsman redeemer. He says, yes, I will do it. It's a wonderful story. And then verse 12 says, but, while that's true, that I'm a near relative, there's a closer relative. Now, in the Hebrew law, there was a reality that relatives took care of each other by law. They needed to take care of each other. And so the closest relative it's like, I have a responsibility to this widow and this daughter-in-law. I have a responsibility to them. The nearest relative was supposed to take care of them. And Boaz is saying, there's a nearer relative than me. If Boaz was like a third cousin, there would be like a second cousin that's closer in line that is supposed to take care of them. So Boaz is saying, you want me to be the kinsman redeemer, but I've got to do this the right way. I've got to do this the right way. So stay here, Ruth. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem you, if so-and-so wants to redeem you, good. Let him redeem you. But if he's not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. So lie here in the morning. Someone else has the rights. Someone else could buy the land. But Boaz is saying, I'm going to take care of it. So she lay at his feet until morning and got up before anyone could be recognized. And he said, don't let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor. Don't let your reputation be harmed. Now, they didn't do anything that night. The Bible doesn't say anything about that. They're people of holiness. But he said, bring me a shawl that you're wearing, and hold it out. And when she did, he poured into it 6 measures of barley and gave it to her, and then she went back into town. He says, I'm gonna give you grain as a down payment, as a promise. I'm doing this. And then she goes back. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, how did it go, my daughter? And she told her everything Boaz had done for her, and added, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Then Naomi said, wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today. Naomi had gone out and become empty. And Boaz is saying, no, that emptiness will end. You will have fullness. So Naomi says, wait, my daughter. I know Boaz. Wait and rest, because he will not rest until he has solved this. Oh, it's such a good story. I love this story because it's real. It feels like an actual human story, and the Bible is full of human stories, real stories. That it's like, this isn't some made-up religious book that we can't connect to. This is like, I can feel the tension. I really love this story. And so what do we learn? As we pause and say, okay, this was an event that happened, what do we learn? We learn about Ruth, right? We learn about Ruth and this Proverbs 31 woman, right? That what makes her an amazingly worthy woman is self-sacrificial love. Self-sacrificial love is what makes a human a good human, right? Love is the deepest reality that makes someone good. And she is better than almost every other character in the Old Testament. A Moabite. Like for the Jewish reader, they'd be like, wait, how do I get my mind around this? And it's partially to say God actually cares about all people. What does this say about Ruth? What does this say about our need for rest? What drives Naomi in this story? What drives Naomi is thinking about Ruth and looking at her and saying, she needs rest. She needs a permanent home. She needs a sense of deep security. And I love her so deeply that I want to pursue that for her. Now, what is rest? This week, as like Blaine was praying, I have spent a lot of time on the couch. Oh, great, Pastor. You spent a lot of time on the couch, huh? Yeah, and it wasn't a restful spending time on the couch, right? You know that, right? Because sometimes you're working hard and you're like, oh, I wish I could just get sick so I could rest, right? It's not true. It's not rest when you're sitting on the couch and you're like half dead from sickness, and head colds are horrible, right? I'm just tired, and like that's not rest. It wasn't rest last night when I'm like up at 1 trying to fall asleep. I'm laying in my bed, so it's rest, right? No, that's not rest. What is rest? Rest is completeness. Rest is being whole. Rest is shalom. It's the biblical word, right? Now, when you move to a new town, I know students who have moved back to town and stuff, there's this season where it's like exciting but not rest. And starting school as a freshman, like that was not a season of rest for me. It was hard. It's hard. And there's thousands of students not experiencing rest because their lives are upended. That's hard. Life gets upended. Why? Because sin destroys. Sin tears apart. Sin tears down. We get sick, we get frustrated, we get hurt, we hurt others. And life is hard. Being in college, being in school, working, friends, family life, it's good, but it's also got this twist to it, right? It's just off. And sometimes it's so beautiful, and I love life, and then sometimes it's like, man, it's just off, and I'm feeling this sense, this lack of rest. Sin has invaded the world, and everything falls apart. And it takes constant work to put it back together. So we find no rest. And sin also damages the very core of who we are. Deep in our hearts, we know, I'm not the way I ought to be. I'm not the way I ought to be, and I have this brokenness that nothing can fix. Now, I love the Lord of the Rings. I've quoted it often. And it's like we're Frodo, who's been stabbed by a Morgul blade, and that wound will never heal. That's our situation in this life because of sin. How can we possibly find rest? Well, Jesus gives us hope here, right? What does Jesus say? Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. How does God work in the world? And on your bulletin it says, in salvation, in sanctification, and in completion. And this is what's interesting, is in salvation, God alone does the work. God alone gives rest. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. When we come to Jesus, we come broken and tired and lonely and empty. Life is too big, and we need God to fill us, and He does. He does. And there's this release and there's this joy. I remember it deeply. I was 17 years old and learned the reality that Jesus' death on the cross was for my sin, and my sin is what was separating me from God. And when I trust in him to be the payment for my sin, I find that there's a vertical relationship with God that's restored, and I can come to God who's such a joy. I remember it felt like the movie The Wizard of Oz. It's all black and white. Then you open the door and it's Technicolor. And I remember that. It was so joyful, right? Those of you that have come to faith later in life, you probably have moments like that. Those of you that it's a longer process of growing up in it, it might not feel that same way. But then it went away. That joy and that life went away, even though the Bible says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away and the new has come. I found that I was feeling a lack of ability to understand that and live that out. Why? Because while our first coming to faith in Christ is purely God alone, our walking in faith is a partnership. The process by which we become more like Jesus is a partnership between God and ourselves. Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, I will give you rest." That's the initial reality. But then he says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." There is a difference that happens in Jesus' teaching right here. There's a rest we get by sheer grace, and there's a rest that we get in partnership with God. What is this yoke? It's like what you would put an oxen, you would put a yoke and they would start pulling. Or people would actually carry water. They put a yoke and then there's two water things right here. He says, I have a yoke. I have a teaching that if you would live by my teaching, if you would learn how to follow me, then you will find rest for your souls. If you find yourself not experiencing rest, I think a valid reality is to ask yourself, am I living by Jesus' teaching? Now, that doesn't mean, okay, life is perfect, and all of a sudden, if you just follow Jesus, then life is perfect and great. No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying there's an eternal reality that says, even though my life fall apart, God is near. And there is a way to walk with God that says, I'm walking with God in such a way that if I walk in this way and learn how to do that, then yeah, I'll find rest for my soul. That's a promise that God has. And so if you find yourself today looking at your life and being like, you know what? There's stuff in my life that is like, it's actually not aligned with Jesus. Take it out. Say, God, take it out. Take that part of my life out. I can't drink from a freshwater spring and a saltwater spring and that be helpful. If you're taking in the world and taking in Jesus, it's like drinking milk and then drinking Mountain Dew. Like, it's just going to mess you up, guys. Okay, it's just like, that is so, like, can you imagine trying to do that? You're like, yeah, let me get some milk, let me get some Mountain Dew. Just, if you're living with one foot in following Jesus and one foot in the world, it's going to mess you up. Instead, Jesus wants to help you find rest for your soul. And this is not just Jesus' teaching. There's other teachers who say, in 2 Peter, it says, for this reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue. And supplement your virtue with knowledge. And supplement your knowledge with self-control. And supplement your self-control with steadfastness. And supplement your steadfastness with godliness. And supplement your godliness with brotherly affection. And supplement your brotherly affection with love. Make every effort to grow. It's like the strongest Greek command you can have is make every effort to press into God. Make every effort to kill your sin. Make every effort to live completely as a follower of Jesus by God's power. By the power that he works within us. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who is at work within you, both to will and to act according to his good pleasure. In my life, I look at some things I do and I'm like, man, I hate that. I hate that about myself. I wish that my passion for Jesus was way more consistent. And if I could just reach into my soul and flip up a switch, I would do it in a moment. I would flip a switch that says, don't get frustrated with knucklehead people. Wouldn't you flip that switch? Wouldn't you flip that switch that says, that boss you have, that coworker? We can't. We can't do that. What do we have to do? It's all indirect. It's indirect in that how does God flip that switch is through me spending time reading my Bible, spending time in prayer, in stopping and thinking of him, in resting in his reality. That's how God flips those switches, right? And this is what Naomi did. She said, life is a partnership between God and humans. How am I going to find rest for Ruth? It's not going to be through me being incredibly passive. Naomi makes a plan. She makes a plan that says, okay, we've got to strike when it's logical, right? Let's be wise here. If you're going to approach a man, approach him when he's happy. Okay, that's just free advice. Okay, free advice. You approach a man when they're happy. My kids know this. If you ask me for ice cream, if I'm happy, what's the answer? Almost always yes, right? Almost always. If I'm in a mood, anyway. So Naomi says, let's just use logic here. He's happy. Let's use logic. Dress up. Put on perfume, right? But she doesn't say, this plan has to work. She says, here's the plan, God. Would you please make it work? We have a responsibility in life. We are active agents in our own life under God's sovereign care. It's this partnership between us and God. It's this partnership that Ruth says, you know, I have some agency too. I'm not just going to do whatever he says. I'm going to be like, hey, I'll tell you what to do. Right? If the man is happy, it also will accept that. I'll tell you what to do. Okay? Now, they didn't know. How does this story end? They had their plans, and then what did they have to do? They had to wait. They didn't know the end of their story yet, but we do. Right? We know the end of our story is the end of the universe as we know it. When Jesus returns and makes it all right again, right? Jesus comes back and he sets everything to right and he rescues the downtrodden and he rewards the righteous. Jesus will return as reigning king. So in our salvation, God alone works. In our sanctification, it's a partnership between us and God. And in the culmination, it's God alone. God alone comes, Jesus comes back, and he appears in the heavens. The tribes of the earth will mourn. He comes on the clouds with power and great glory. He sends out his trumpets with the loudest trumpet call. He gathers his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. In Revelation 21, he says, behold, I make all things new. Jesus is coming to make all things new. What does that mean? That means the end of human existence is one of rest. Rest in what God has done. We come into faith through Jesus giving us rest. The end of human history is one of God giving us rest. And the middle ought to be one of this partnership of working with God so that we can find rest for our souls. That's what Naomi and Ruth are pursuing. And that's what we ought to pursue as well. So how do we apply this? Live like you know the end of the story. Live like you know that the reality is settled. The reality of God coming back and reigning and fixing everything, that's a settled reality. We live by that by faith because it doesn't feel settled right now, does it? It doesn't feel settled. It feels chaotic sometimes. But how much time are you spending researching the chaos and spending time listening to talking heads talk about the chaos? Versus listening to the Lord talk about the peace and rest that he will bring. Honestly, look at your time. What are you bringing into your ears and your eyes? Is it feeding the chaos? Or is it feeding the peace and rest? It's a real thing we got to wrestle with, right? So many people spend so much time thinking about politics or sports or fashion or status, right? And all that literally is going to burn, right? There's three things that will remain: God, His Word, and other people. God, His Word, and other people. And are we investing in that? That's what we should be about, His kingdom. Not the kingdoms of this world, not the chaos of this world. There's this poem that has these two lines that are up in my house, and it says, "Only one life, it will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last." You have only one life, it will soon be past, and only what's done for Christ will last. And so we should be like Naomi, making daring plans for God's kingdom. What we see physically in the Old Testament, we see spiritually in the New, right? So we should be like Naomi, who's making plans to help rescue and save someone else, right? Do you make plans to help share the gospel with people? To have spiritual conversations? I think we should. And do we have courage, like Naomi and Ruth? Or are we just kind of passive, barely doing anything for God's kingdom, getting so wrapped up in things that will utterly be destroyed ultimately, that it's like we don't have time or energy for building God's kingdom? There is a life that is offered to us in building God's kingdom, and that can be done in so many ways. That can be done through conversations, for caring for people, through helping a church, helping a rescue mission. Like, there's so many ways to help this world become a place where God is honored and glorified. And we live in this world, but let us never be of this world, right? I want my life to be one where I pursue rest for my soul, and because of me, others find rest for their souls. I deeply want to be like amazing characters, like Ruth and Naomi and Boaz. I want that. But more deeply, what I want is I want people to not look at me, but look through me. Because we're not supposed to look at Ruth and Naomi and Boaz, we're supposed to look through them to see Jesus. Now let's just look at Ruth for a brief moment. Ruth took a risk. She put herself in harm's way, not knowing how it would turn out. Jesus put himself in harm's way knowing exactly how it would turn out. He risked everything, and he just put himself into the hands of other people, and he knew it was going to happen. And it wasn't for his benefit. It was for ours. Why? Because he loves us. He loves us. So he didn't say, you know what, let me hold on to my life. He said, you know what, I give my life. Ruth points us to the one who risked it all, knowing what it would cost him, so that we could find rest. And that's what this story should really, really deeply teach us. There is a rest that comes at great sacrifice. Let me pray. Oh God, would you please help us become people who make every effort to follow you, Jesus, because you made every effort for us. Jesus, you said, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Jesus, you said, "Come to me and learn from me. Take my yoke upon you, for you are gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Jesus, for your yoke is easy and your burden is light. Jesus, I pray that if people have not come to you yet for that initial rest for salvation, God, would you bid them come? And Jesus, I pray that you would teach us how to take your yoke upon us, how to learn from you. Jesus, you are gentle. You are lowly in heart. And Jesus, help us find rest for our souls. Amen.